One of the observers that saw over into Laos sees an artillery battery coming out from the caves that's coming out, getting ready to shoot at us. And so all of our batteries are sitting there ready, like 100 rounds per gun, ready to go. So we can put like 2,400 rounds in this guy immediately. And way out in the distance, you hear boom, 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 boom. They started firing at us.
Exactly 81 years ago, on a night of fury during the battle to retake Guam, Richard Rodgers' father, 2nd Lieutenant Richard R. Rodgers, an artillery officer with Headquarters Battery, 12th Marines, was killed in action during World War II.
I grew up in Long Beach, California, and went to school out there. When I was 6 years old, my mother told me one day, said, "Who do you think this set of grandparents are?" And I said, "I'm not sure. Who do they belong to?" Until then, until I was 6 years old, I did not know that my real father was a Marine Corps officer in World War II, and he was killed in combat in World War II. So I didn't even know that until I was 6 years old.
He was just 21 years old, but one of rare promise, an exceptional student, a multi-sport athlete, and a football player at UCLA. His father and mother received the telegram no parent should ever have to read. It said their son had led a patrol up a hill, standing between the Japanese and the Marines below, determined to stop the enemy from raining death upon his fellow Marines. That courage cost him his life. 24 years later, in 1968, Vietnam veteran Richard Rodgers, too, wore the uniform of a Marine artillery officer, serving in the same 12th Marines, fighting with the same 9th Marines in honor of his father and World War II hero.
When she told me that, I said, I'm going to do exactly the same thing. Right then, 6 years old, I set in my mind, I'm going to be a Marine Corps officer, go into combat, and there you go, the same thing. So that drove me through all my years in school and so forth. So I thought, that what's the very best way to become a Marine Corps officer is to go to the Naval Academy. So I applied to the Naval Academy, took the SATs one time, and when I got to the end of marking my answer sheet, my answers didn't match where you put them over here on the side. I ended up with one left over. So most all my answers were wrong. So I had like a 710 in math and a 420 or something in verbal, which is ridiculous. Didn't know that you could take it again, which I should have. So I went to the University of California, Berkeley for 1 year, applied to the Naval Academy again, got a 720 in math and a 700 in verbal, and I was accepted to the Naval Academy. When you go to the Naval Academy, you have to be appointed there by somebody in Congress, a senator or a member of the House of Representatives, or the President of the United States. The President of the United States can appoint 150 people per year from the reserves or children of members of the service who were killed in action. So since my father was out, I applied to have my application go through him, and I was appointed to the Naval Academy by President John Kennedy. So he appointed me to the Naval Academy. When I got to the Naval Academy, everything I did there went very well. And I knew as soon as I graduated, I was going to go in the Marine Corps without any question. Because my mother was a little sensitive about that, I actually told her that I was going to go in the Navy early on. She was all right with that. And later on, I said, you know what? There's some openings in the Marine Corps to be a lawyer. So she said, oh, that'd be good. But I was never going to do that. So I told her that. And then when I graduated, I said, actually, they need people over in Vietnam right now. So they're going to be sending me over to Vietnam. So when I went through, graduated from the Naval Academy, they then send you in the Marine Corps to 8 months of training to be an infantry officer. So you can lead infantry units whenever you want. The infantry in the Marine Corps is like the pinnacle. It's called the Queen of Battle. And when the Marine Corps infantry closes in on you, you're not going to be in good shape. So everybody's motivated to be in infantry. So when I got ready to leave there, I said, I want to be in infantry. And they said, no, you maxed out all the math tests that we gave you. We need you in artillery. I said, artillery? With the big explosions and everything? I was like, don't know if I really want to be in artillery. as well. That's where you're going because we need you there. So they put me in artillery. They then send you to Fort Sill, Oklahoma to learn how to shoot artillery. So I went there and did very well while I was there. There were about 150 students there in the class, and I think I ended up third or fourth out of the whole class. So finished that up, and then was sent to Vietnam pretty much after that. Arrived over in Okinawa, and when we got to Okinawa, Japan, on the way to Vietnam, there had been a lot of fighting just prior to that. 1968 and 1969 were the two worst years of fighting in Vietnam. So this was early 1968, May of 1968.
1968 and 1969, arguably the worst years to be in Vietnam.
Bravo Company, which started off with more than 130 men, is now down to 90. They are courageous, but they lack cunning.
In 1968, the Tet Offensive erupted with coordinated attacks across the country that shattered any illusion of an easy win. US troops were at their peak, yet the fighting was brutal. Jungle ambushes, relentless guerrilla warfare, and mounting casualties.
And so half of our artillery officers needed to be replacements for infantry officers that were just killed and wounded and are no longer there. So they took half of us and put it in infantry, and they sent me to an artillery unit way up north. So every place I went to, we arrived in Dong Ha. They said, you're going to go up to Quang Tri. They said, ooh, Quang Tri. And they said, now you're going up to Dong Ha. Ooh, Dong Ha. And then you're going to go north and you go up to C2. So I went to C2, which is maybe 10 miles below the line between North Vietnam and South Vietnam. And I got there and there was a person sitting on the ground in a green t-shirt, and he looked like an officer. So I saluted him and said, reporting for duty. He said, good. He says, we have 7 artillery batteries here. This is my first day in Vietnam. I'm sure this never happened to anyone ever in Vietnam. First day in Vietnam. As a second lieutenant, which is a brown bar. People say, brown bars don't know how to do anything, right? We're in control of 7 artillery batteries here, and tonight they're yours. So let me go in and introduce you to the people. And when I get off, you come on, and they're yours tonight to control. I said, yes, sir. So went in there and took over, met all the people. Here we go. Now we're in combat. I'm telling them how much to shoot, what kind of rounds to shoot, what kind of fuses to use, all these kind of things. And maybe about 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, an infantry unit called in and said they're being overrun, and the North Vietnamese are coming through their location there. So I had this one battery start shooting, and then I gave them a command: maximum rate of fire, continuous fire, which is as fast as you can put a round in there. Shoot it. 6 guns. Boom, 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 boom. And so they started doing that for a little while. I said, go wake up the major. And he comes there and says, what's going on? I said, they were overrun. I said, how long you been doing that? I said, 4 or 5 minutes. He says, woo. He says, okay. Told the battery to check fire, quit firing now. And he said, okay. So the command is sustained rate of fire, not maximum rate of fire. Every 20 seconds, take their time, and you won't wear out the tubes. Good. The next 13 months I was there, no one ever told me anything about my job, ever, for 13 months. I was on my own. Whatever I did. Worked out really well. So for about a month or so, I directed the artillery fire of all these different batteries onto targets with all kinds of different munitions and combinations, and called fire for effect. So when you adjust artillery on a target, you usually use 2 guns at once. And once you get close, if it's a big target, you have many of the other batteries around are following along. And they're sitting there maybe with 20 or 50 rounds per gun, waiting, standing there. And so now when you hit fire for effect, you can maybe have 1,000 artillery rounds on them at the same time, and they just keep coming at that point. So very effective. It's called fire for effect. So I did that for about a month there, and then they sent me further north to a place called Con Tien, which is right on the border between North Vietnam and South Vietnam. You can look over the wire and you're looking into North Vietnam right out there. At Con Tien, I was the executive officer of a 4.2-inch mortar battery. So they got me experience in an actual artillery battery that could only shoot about 6,000 meters, so that's not too far actually for artillery. And that location at Con Tien had been typically bombarded by North Vietnamese artillery nonstop. In 1967, there were hundreds of Marines killed there at Con Tien by artillery that came in, and both artillery units and infantry. And we were being shelled all the time too from North Vietnam while we were there. So then I would call for artillery fire from our guns that can shoot 20 miles that are way back to counter fire their artillery. So you have artillery battles going on, artillery versus artillery. One of the most amazing things that happened there was that when artillery rounds come in from North Vietnamese, which are Russian artillery pieces, a lot of those are not, they're smooth bore artillery pieces. So they just go straight out like that, like a battleship just shoots it straight out. They're not spun and twirled like our artillery pieces. So they come really fast. When those rounds came, bam, right now, we would all be dead, completely dead, just like that. The next time a round like that comes through the air, and this happens to everybody, which is crazy. It's in the air somewhere, coming really fast. Your body throws you down on the ground without even properly hearing that. And you hit the ground as those rounds are landing so that you don't get killed by them. So constantly you see 100 Marines drop into the ground involuntarily, a lot of times into mud because it's saving your life. And it happens the whole time that you're there. It's the weirdest thing, that it's kind of like a squirrel. If you throw water at them from behind, the squirrel can sense that water coming. And here you hit the ground immediately, and everybody does it all the time. But the first time, you don't understand what it is. Every time after that, if the round's in the air, you'll hear it. I was on a mountaintop later on with about 8 other officers, and we were standing there and talking, and I hit the ground, and I'm on the ground. And they look at me like, "What are you doing?" And I said, "Listen now." And then the rounds landed out there in the distance. I said, those artillery rounds just missed the top of this hill, and I'm used to hearing them in the air. So that's why I was on the ground. But if you hadn't had that experience before, you would die when those rounds landed. So after the first time, it's amazing. Your body is able to adjust that. Most amazing thing I ever saw. So after I was there for a little while, about a month, they sent me back to the same unit where I was in charge of all the artillery units, shooting them all the time. And then we started moving into the mountains. So most of the time after that, the 9th Marine Regiment, which is an infantry regiment, is supported by the 12th Marines, which is an artillery regiment, always. And the 2nd Battalion of the 12th Marines always supports the 9th Marine Regiment in combat. So wherever they went, the 9th Marines fought a lot. They did a great job there. We went with them. So they would fly us into these different mountaintops, and they would go out ahead of time and send out people to blow down the trees, send bulldozers to clear spots, would put shaped charges into the ground, creating huge holes, and then they would fly in our artillery pieces and land them in those holes, in those 6 holes. So as soon as you landed, you're working fast to get them ready to fire. And maybe in a couple of minutes, you can be able to shoot those pieces right away as soon as you land. So the idea was to find the North Vietnamese wherever they were, always looking for them. And we had little outposts throughout the whole area of northern South Vietnam, and some up in actually North Vietnam, looking for the NVA to try to find them. And if they found them, pretty good sized unit of them, they would move the whole 9th Marine Regiment, quite a few people, and our artillery battalion, 4 artillery batteries, and form like a triangle, and with the sides of each triangle being about 8,000 meters, so that we would trap the North Vietnamese on the inside. And then as the infantry closed in, all of our artillery could fire on them from 3 different directions, and all the artillery batteries could support each other also if we're attacked. So I would always have 2 artillery batteries that could support me, and I would be supporting the other 2 artillery batteries if they're attacked. And that came in helpful over time, of course, too. So we spent a good amount of time on the mountains and moving around as soon as they found more North Vietnamese units. We moved to another mountain where I was there for a little bit of time. While I was there, an artillery round landed and a shrapnel came and hit me in the face when I was sleeping at night, right there, still a piece there. And so I was bleeding like crazy as that thing hit me. I climbed back up into where the corpsman was, who is like a medic. And like, oh my God, you look terrible. I said, great, don't need to hear that from you. But I was covered in blood, you know. The whole mountain was in fog, complete fog. So the possibility of a rescue unit, a helicopter coming to get me, pretty slim. But they asked for one, and an Army Huey helicopter came in complete fog, landed on that mountain, and took me away to a hospital ship. The Navy hospital ships were floating off of Vietnam, ready to help fix people who were injured all the time, going up and down. And as soon as I got on that helicopter, I passed out from shock or loss of blood or something. So I got on the ship and they got me down there to some room on there and opened my eye, said, can you see? And it was an American nurse there, which have now, for about eight or 9 months in Vietnam, never seen an American woman at all. I said, oh my God, you know, gone to heaven. Here I am, great. He says, yeah, I can see. I said, good. So they covered my eyes with patches because it was kind of injured. And I was now due to go see my wife in Honolulu in 4 days. And so I told him, I don't care what you do, I'm going to see my wife. So if I have to leave here in these hospital scrubs or something, that's what I'm doing. I'm going there. So they flew my uniform out there, so I was able to put that on. They said, you can come back, we'll repair your eye after your trip to Hawaii. So I was able to go to Hawaii and meet my wife. And we left about 10 p.m. on Christmas Eve to go back to Vietnam. And as you go in that direction, you go over the international date line a couple hours later, and it became the 26th right away. So the 25th like never happened. So I'm minus one Christmas that I have to fix someday still. Go over in Asia and then come back this way to get another Christmas to balance that out someday. Still have to do that. So when I got back there, it was on the hospital ship. These people were talking about a huge attack that the Marines are about to go into down in this place called the Ashau Valley and going after the NVA there. I said, what? I said, get me off of this thing. So they fixed my eye. And a couple of days later, I had to bring my utilities out there so I could travel out there and go back to where my unit is. So I got back out there, joined the transportation to the Ashau Valley. And we did an amazing job there in the Ashau Valley, fighting down there while we were being attacked by the North Vietnamese left and right. So that location was right on the border with Laos, which we were not allowed to go into. But there were tons of North Vietnamese over there. So our commanding officer of our infantry regiment, the 9th Marines, said, we're going over there and we're going to take all this stuff that they have over there that they're shooting at us. So one of the observers that saw over into Laos sees an artillery battery coming out from the caves that's coming out, getting ready to shoot at us over in the Ashau Valley. And so all of our batteries are sitting there ready, like 100 rounds per gun, ready to go. So we can put like 2,400 rounds in this guy immediately whenever we start. So everybody's standing there, helmets and flak jackets, quiet, and the jungle is like not a sound. And way out in the distance you hear boom, 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 boom. They started firing at us. I said, okay. So then I was the lead battery. I fired one round, all guns, and they landed right on top of that battery. That infantry guy was amazing, our forward observer runner, to detail the exact location. And then we put 2,400 rounds on them immediately. Everybody was killed, 67, all the target people, everything wiped out. So then the infantry, we then bombarded that whole area a lot. And they went over there into Laos with really almost no approval. So that was like a big deal, going across into a different country and attacking. And many years later, I was in Los Angeles, and I saw it on the headlines of the Los Angeles Times. Marine unit went into Laos 2 years ago. They definitely did all right. So they, 9th Marines were very successful in destroying zillion artillery rounds, artillery pieces, trucks, everything. An amazingly successful job. And later we were allowed to go back over there again because it was so successful. That regimental commander, Barrow, later became the commandant of the Marine Corps, in charge of the whole Marine Corps, because of his aggressiveness and his ability to do things. So very successful there in the Ashau Valley. As we were down there, one of our artillery batteries misfired and killed some Marines out there. So as they did, they asked the people who were coordinating the artillery to be fired, 3 of us, to go over and figure out where the mistake was. And so 2 of the first lieutenants went over there to try to figure out where the mistake was. They couldn't figure it out. I went over there and I was able to figure out that their last gun had laid their stakes. They look at stakes to see how you're shooting. They did it incorrectly. So that's why they shot the wrong direction and killed the Marines. When I came back and told them that, the colonel there then said, okay, we've relieved all the officers and all the sergeants there. They're gone. You go take over that artillery battery right now, and it's yours. I said, yes, sir. So I did, and right then, as soon as I get over there, I get a fire mission to shoot on more people. And then comes this order right away, close station march order, which in artillery means leave. So here comes all these helicopters. I've been over there like 15 minutes. I don't even know anybody's name. And they're coming to pick us all up and fly us over to another place to fire into Laos. And they get it about halfway done, and they ran out of time. It's getting too dark. So my artillery pieces were at the other location. Half of my Marines were at the other location. And the other half of us are back in the old location still. We never made it there. So the next morning we were able to get over there and join them. A huge amount of Marines came on that location that night. So we had about 500 Marines there, a battalion that was going to attack into Laos the next day. And that's a lot. Usually you have maybe 100 Marines in the infantry that surround the mountain. Now we have 500. So the North Vietnamese picked that night to attack us. Very bad decision. We have 500 Marines standing around almost shoulder to shoulder. And so about 400 or so of the North Vietnamese were killed in that attack. And we lost 1 person in the Marines in that attack. Not a good night to attack the Marine Corps when we have 500 Marines sitting right there. And I was in charge of that battery for a good amount of time. One of the only first lieutenants that I ever knew in Vietnam. There was a battery commander of an artillery battery. I didn't see any other first lieutenants. They're always captains, next rank up. So that was good. So when we finally got down to my last 2 or 3 days in Vietnam, been there 13 months now. The Marines go for 13 months. Army went for 12 months. So you got to go through a whole month first before you have a year to go if you're in the Marine Corps. Our first 2 anniversaries with my wife, our wedding anniversaries, both of them were in Vietnam. So the third one was the first one we had together. So I got 2 or 3 days later to go, and this Army unit over there, 5th Mechanized Rear, was attacked way out somewhere, and they had 30 killed that day by the North Vietnamese. So they want to fly my artillery battery out there to defend this infantry unit out in the middle of nowhere. So away we go right away. I've got 2 days left. So as we get out there, we're in this big, it's like a bowl. We're in the bottom of a bowl, and we're at the bottom of it, surrounded by hills. I said, who picked this spot? And it couldn't be worse, because they can just shoot at you from any direction, things like that. So I'm looking around here, and in 13 months, I never lost a guy. Never had one Marine killed. We did a lot of good fighting. We prepared things, dug fighting holes, helmets and flak jacket, all the right things to do. So I said, okay, start digging like crazy. So everybody's digging holes, and we're getting the artillery ready to fight defensive fires and things like that. So typically what I would do every night, wherever I was, I would shoot artillery into the surrounding mountains that are real close, right at dusk and maybe a little bit later also, with no one's approval. So that's kind of a little sketchy. You should probably check out to see if we have friendly people out there, but probably didn't. So I would just blast these mountains away every night. And if the North Vietnamese are out there, I said, okay, you want to do something to us? This is what you're going to come into. Before I got to Vietnam, I never knew about 2 kinds of ammunition that the major told me when I got there. He said, you probably never heard of these, but you'll be using them here all the time. So one of them is called flechettes. So the artillery round comes with 8,000 iron darts that look like arrows. They're packed in both directions, very tight. And if you fire that right outside the artillery tube, it opens up immediately. And we'll put one of those in about every square foot of a football field. You can also set time fuses on it and have it explode on a mountain way out there the same way and cover the mountain from above. So that was good. We had another kind of round called the firecracker. Firecracker had inside the artillery piece golf ball sized hand grenades. And if you shot them up above the enemy, over the top of them, it would eject out the rear of it, come on down and land, hit the ground on a spring, come up in the air, and then go off. So you had all these little hand grenades going off about 5 feet in the air, very effective against infantry out there. So we used those kinds. So I would shoot those rounds every night also. Let them know, you want to come after us? That's what you're going to see if you want to mess with us. So people, they did not normally want to mess with us, having seen that every night. So after I was there for a day and a half, the next morning I had to leave because that was my 13th month day. And another officer flew in to take my battery. I never even talked to him because I had to leave. He's on the same helicopter, which is really dumb that we weren't able to talk. And that night, because he didn't do these things, they were attacked very heavily, and 3 of my Marines were killed that night, which had never happened before, because I always challenged them that you don't want to mess with us. And he didn't know how to do that probably, so he didn't do it. So it was right after I left that some of the Marines were killed. So as we were out there all these times in Vietnam, lots of things happened, which are pretty interesting from time to time. So we would have, when I was at Con Tien, right on the border with North Vietnam, and we're shooting artillery up there. This guy gets on the radio and he says, check fire, you're hitting us. Speaking English as clearly as we are, right here. I said, what? I said, where are you? Identify yourself. He said, no, check fire. We're right here. We're dug in, and you're hitting us. And so I checked back with the regiments and all these other people to see, do we have anybody up there? And they said, no, we don't have anybody in that area in North Vietnam right now. And this guy says that we do. So I said, well, we don't have anybody up there, so you're not with any kind of unit, and you can't identify the unit. So we're going to keep shooting artillery at you. So he says, don't do that, or we'll start shooting artillery back at you. Well, I know we don't have any artillery units up there. So where is this guy going to get these artillery pieces? As we are shooting some of these things out there, this person was saying we're hitting them, right? So back then, the radios we used were called the PRC-25, a Prick 25, and only one channel. You can't scan channels to see who's talking, and only one channel. So it happens to be the channel that we're on. This guy is on the same frequency that we're talking to our guns. And he says, guns, get ready. So his guns are on that same frequency? I doubt that, right? So 6,400 mils, right? So when you shoot, if it's straight ahead completely, it's 0 mils, like directly ahead. And 6,400 degree circle. So straight up is 1,600. So he gives a command to his guns, 1,600, which would be precisely straight up in the air for his guns to fire. I said, good, go ahead and do that. If you're gonna shoot all those precisely up in the air, they're gonna all come down, right down and land on you. So obviously this guy doesn't know what he's talking about. So we blew that whole area away as much as we could to get that thing taken care of. So things like that happen all the time. I was in the night one night and people called in and said, we're getting attacked by helicopters above us. They're shooting on us. Infantry is. I thought, who is attacking our infantry at night by helicopters? And I want to make sure it's not our helicopters that are in the air. So I checked back with our regimental clearance house, and they said, we don't have any helicopters up there. I said, well, if they don't have any helicopters up there, then must be Russian helicopters that the Vietnamese are using, if it's even true. So I said, I need clearance to fire up there, and they wouldn't give me clearance. So I waited about 5 minutes, and these guys are yelling, hey, these guys are shooting at us. So I fired all the artillery up there with proximity fuses. If it comes close to something, it'll go off. So if it comes close to a helicopter, it's going to knock them out of the sky, okay? With no approval at all from anybody. So I'm knocking these helicopters out of the sky, if they're there, but we didn't hit anything. So the next night, same thing happens. They're shooting down on us. Call back the regimental for approval. I said, if you don't give me approval in 5 minutes, I'm firing. It's up to you. So about 4 minutes later, they said, okay, you're approved to fire. So now somebody actually approved me doing it. So I fired up there, same thing. So maybe 500 feet or 800 feet above our people, those artillery rounds are going over their heads. So if it hits the helicopter, that's okay. It's not going to hit them because it's way above their heads as they're going by. But we didn't hit anything again. So different things like that happen all the time. One night, about 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, got a call in from one of the infantry units that's way out there. And he says, we have a spaceship hovering over us. I said, what? He says, sir, he says, there's a spaceship hovering over him out there on a mountain. Really? I said, okay, well, tell him to wave at it and tell him to go away. So he calls in again. No, it's above him and it's coming down closer above him. I said, okay, if he's going to keep saying this, wake up the officer that there. It's called the actual. So they have like a call sign, Hasty Foot 26, actual, that's the officer. I want to hear that officer tell me that spaceship is up there. So the officer gets on the phone, yeah, it's up there. I said, what? So I'm talking to all my guys, I said, what do you think the odds are that some spaceship from somewhere has come here to see our tiny little battle with Vietnam, North Vietnam? Not very probable. So if it's not a spaceship, what is it? It must be something that has to do with North Vietnamese, Russian, something. I don't know. But I doubt it's a spaceship. So if we knock this out of the air, we're probably not taking down a spaceship from somewhere and really ticking them off so they wipe us all out, right? So it goes down a little bit to the side down there and lands, and I destroyed that whole area with artillery. So the next day they go walking down there on a patrol to find out what it was. And we destroyed it really well. What it was an Air Force weather balloon that had been up in the air, and it has all these lights on it to determine the weather. And it had come down over into Vietnam in our area, right over these guys, and they thought it was a spaceship. So I destroyed a Air Force weather balloon very well indeed. Very proud of that. When we were in the Ashau Valley, I was used to being in charge of all the different artillery batteries, 7. And now I have my own battery, just 1. So I can only be on one channel here and find out what's going on. So I sent 2 of my guys to fly all the way down to Da Nang, which is way down south. Said, go find an Army warehouse. Army has everything. They have 10,000 whatevers. Marine Corps has none. It's unbelievable. An Army unit would go by with all these tractors and armed mechanized vehicles, and the Marine Corps are some donkeys pulling the artillery pieces in. It's unbelievable what the difference is. I said, steal a lot of radios and a ton of batteries and bring them back here. Okay, and then fly them all the way out here to this mountain. So they did. They were successful in stealing all that and getting it back there to us. The Army didn't care. So now I could listen to the whole area and hear what anybody was doing. So if anybody out there at all said they see movement of the North Vietnamese now on all these channels that I can listen to because I stole these radios, I would adjust 2 guns and have my fire direction center say exactly what we have to hit to protect them. And all of a sudden a firefight would break out, and they said, okay, we're fire, we're on a fire, so adjust fire, we need help. And maybe 30 seconds later, I would shoot artillery right there into that battle. And I'm like, how in the heck did you do that? And I was always pre-positioning ourselves that whole time we were down in the Ashau Valley. These guys came back, sometimes they were like, almost crying. We were being hit hard, and you obliterated them in like 30 seconds. But if I hadn't stolen all those radios and knew how that worked, and had my fire direction center plot where our guys are, wouldn't be able to do that.
After Vietnam, Rodgers returned stateside to teach the Marine Corps Reserves in Los Angeles, California, and to serve as the casualty officer for the greater Los Angeles area.
When I came back from Vietnam, I was assigned to instruct the Reserve Artillery Unit in Los Angeles, California. And when I got there, I was also assigned as the casualty officer for the Marine Corps for Greater Los Angeles. So any Marine that was killed, and this was 1968, 69, there was a lot, in the Greater Los Angeles area, I had to go tell the wife and or parents, or both, that he was killed yesterday and let them know that. If an officer came to your door, he's dead. If a sergeant comes to your door, he's wounded. And so we would turn down these streets. If we're going to a prominent black area, Compton or something in LA, I had a black sergeant with me. If we're going to a Hispanic area, I have a Hispanic sergeant with me. And you turn down these streets, and they see an officer in that car, which I can tell that gold braid. These people just ran out there right away crying like crazy, knowing that this kid down there is dead. You don't even have to say anything. They know he's dead because an officer's coming to let them know. So, and then we handled the funeral for him, all the rifle salutes, the taps, everything, presented the flags, on and on and on, all those people all that time. when I was notifying the wives and or parents of the now deceased Marines, and they would call right away from Washington, D.C., call back out to L.A. So I got a call one morning. The person I needed to contact was just left on an airplane to go meet her husband in Hawaii. And the person in Knoxville, Tennessee couldn't tell her because she just got on that plane. So you need to go down to the airport, you need to go meet that plane, you need to get her off of that plane and tell her that she's not going to meet him in Hawaii and that, he was killed. So I did, got her off the plane. So this kid that was killed was like the all-county high school football fabulous quarterback the previous year. I mean, big-time star in the area, and in Knoxville, Tennessee. So calls her father. Father says, "I want you on that plane with her to come back right now." I said, "Yes, sir. Whenever somebody wants something, they're the next of kin. You just do it, So I just filled out some form with some incorrect numbers for the airline. It says, "Here, this is a good voucher, A1447." And then we flew back different places along the way. We landed in Huntsville, Alabama, and we walked around a little bit because we had a layover. And she was still okay right then, relatively. And talking about how proud everyone is to be in the Marine Corps. She kept saying that over, and how proud she was of him being in the Marine Corps. She's like 18 years old. And got back in the plane. When we got back on to fly to Knoxville, now she started to break down now, pretty well. Now she's going to go see all the people. We got there's probably 150 people waiting for us there at the airport. So my counterpart there, a captain in Knoxville, Tennessee, had told the parents. And then, so we got her back. So that was a very unusual notification of the next of kin there.
There, he had the burden of walking up to many front doors, of looking into the eyes of a grieving wife or shattered parents and telling them that the Marine would not come home alive. Rodgers stood in that doorway too many times. In those moments, he felt his father's presence and the weight of all those who had gone before. The circle, it seemed, had come full.
In our area of the Marine Corps of North Vietnam, we moved all the people out of there, moved them to the coast. We said there's going to be a lot of fighting up here, and you don't want to be around this stuff, so we helped them. So years earlier, we cleared them all out. So we didn't have to worry about local villagers being either Viet Cong causing us problems. And if somebody moved out there and it's not us, we know it's the North Vietnamese. And many times they had a lot of them there. One night we got a call and said there's a column 2 miles long approaching your location of North Vietnamese. I said, ooh, that's quite a few. But we did not have to worry about the local civilians. That was really good. Where if you fight in cities, it's much worse. You got to worry about the civilians and everything like that. So thank goodness we didn't have to worry about that. First of all, it was easily winnable at any time somebody wanted to win it. We can say that we lost today the war in Vietnam because we left. That's incredible that we had leaders that were so incapable of understanding how to fight a war. LBJ and the Secretary of Defense McNamara, who was from Ford, McNamara said that this is an unwinnable war. And he's the Secretary of Defense. Great. We started bombing occasionally Hanoi and Haiphong Harbor. And after the war, the North Vietnamese said if you had kept up that bombing, we would have surrendered. And so we bombed them maybe for a week or two and then quit. And we didn't attack into North Vietnam at any time. So we had 2 Marine Corps divisions right there on the border between North Vietnam and South Vietnam. Just 2 Marine Corps divisions alone. You let us loose, we'll end this thing in 2 months. But they didn't do it. So you had 500,000 Americans over there with all the artillery and everything else that we had, sitting there waiting for the North Vietnamese to shoot at you. And that's not how you fight a war. And it could have been won so easily at any time they wanted to, and they didn't do it, which is a tremendous shame.